currency exchange party. How about that? Wouldn't
That's
that be
right.
fun?
Okay, now I'm working. I got us. There's always a little bit of a delay on Facebook, but I got it so that we're live streaming now to Facebook. So there was just a slight delay there. So let's see as it comes up. And yes, we're doing good. I'm live on Facebook now. So
Good.
good. So we're in good shape and everything is good to go. So yes. So, I, all right. Yes. And stuff is coming in. They're on Facebook. They're already showing some of the little postings there. And so we're all good to go and everything is working good this week. So that's really nice to know. So, uh, yes, I had an absolutely wonderful trip to Norway. Those folks are just absolutely wonderful. They're an organized group. There's about 80 or 90 of them in the country that they're all organized for this whole currency exchange and the project funding and stuff like that. And they've been communicating with
Right.
some of their friends in Sweden, so they're starting to form a group as well. Well, they had their annual meeting. And what they did it on a cruise ship that leaves Oslo, Norway, and then sails down to Kiel, Germany. You know, you're in port in Germany for
Wow.
3.5 hours and then turn around and go right back. And basically, it's a 2-day trip, 1 day down, 1 day back. And so we're all on the ship, and I was
Right.
on the ship together. You know, so I left, let's see, Los Angeles on Wednesday because I was in the air while, the program time. That's what, no program last week. I arrive in
Right.
Oslo on late Thursday afternoon. Friday morning, we're on the ship. Then we get back from the ship Sunday morning. So I spent time with them Sunday afternoon, and then I flew back home on Monday. That was a long trip. It's like from the time I left the airport in Oslo to the time I got home in Sedona was 23 hours. But doing fine. Everything's good. It's always great. Like Dorothy says, there's no place like home. So it's always great to be back home.
Right.
And but those folks are just absolutely wonderful. So again, I want to say thank you to all the folks in Norway and Sweden that were on this trip together. And I always told them, said, hey, I'll come back anytime. You pay for my airfare and hotel. I'm always coming back. Anytime you want me, I'll come back. So that's a good deal. So that was pretty. It was great. So yep. And
Sounds
then,
like you had gobs of fun.
yes, we did. So it was absolutely wonderful. And then we've got then the workshop coming up in Charlotte a week from Saturday. Plenty of room there, and I've got some great new information that I can share there at the workshops that I really can't. I just not going to take the risk of sharing it here on the air. And then after Charlotte, we're in Puerto Rico, and then I've added a few more workshops. So, and I already posted it on the newsletter, and it's also on the website. April 27th, we're going to be in Miami. Now, why Puerto Rico and then just, 4 weeks later Miami? Well, we're having a Meta One coin board meeting in the Miami area. And I said, hey, if we're going to have a board meeting, I'm already going to be there. Let's just do a workshop there. So April 27th in Miami. Then in May
That's smart.
18th, we're going to be back here in Sedona because Michael Lee Hill is going to be back. He and his fiancee Sarah are coming back to Sedona, and I said, if you guys are coming back, let's just take the Saturday for the workshop. And he said, yeah, we can do that. So I'll have them back, and the people just absolutely love that guy. His story is just phenomenal when you start hearing him.
Right.
He's such an easy, gentle, humble going guy, but he's got these phenomenal things happening in his life. And when he was sharing with us on Sunday, he says, sometimes I kind of feel like Forrest Gump. And when he said that, I thought, I thought you are a real life Forrest Gump as far as I'm concerned. Because, he's just this everyday normal dude that's got these phenomenal things going on in his life. And I'll share on one of those in just a minute. And then, so we got a new one in April, 27th in Miami, May 18th in Sedona. And then on June 22nd, for the first time, I'm going to Las Vegas, baby. Vegas, baby. So I was talking with some of the folks in Norway, and there's a couple of folks there, and they said, we've never been to Sedona. And I thought, you need to come here. And they said, yes, we want to come. And I said, well, here's what you need to do. Instead of flying into Phoenix, fly into Vegas and enjoy yourself there for a couple days. And then, because we're only a 4.5 hour drive from Sedona to Las Vegas, and they said, we could do that. And then we started talking. I says, well, they said, well, why don't you just do a workshop in Vegas? And I thought, I've never done one in Vegas because, it's basically halfway between either Los Angeles or Sedona. And they
Right.
they said, so what? People will come to Vegas. So Vegas, baby, for the first time, we're doing a workshop in Vegas on June 22nd. So that's the schedule for the upcoming schedule that we got going on there. So yeah.
Well, that's an exciting schedule, and I'm sure it's going to be fun to go to Puerto Rico
Yep.
because those folks have been wanting you to go there for a while,
You know,
and so that's going to be a lot of fun.
it is. They have been, and okay. Somebody just put out the question: will the Meta One team be in Charlotte? Yes, there will be some representatives there. I don't know how many, but there will be a couple representatives of the Meta One. Not the whole team, but there will be some of them will be there in Charlotte. They'll be there to answer your questions, take orders, whatever it is you want to do. And while I'm on that, people are asking us, well, why hasn't the coin gone public? Well, Robert is making announcements basically at the workshops is they're still working on the banking structure for the Meta One Bank, and it's extremely close. Part of it is all ready to go. All the logistics are ready to go, but they're still having to work out some of the contract agreements they've got with what I call supporting banks, one here in the United States and one in Geneva, Switzerland. And so they're waiting for that stuff to get done, and they had made the decision that they would release the coin and let the bank go public at the same time. So that's the reason why the coin hasn't gone public yet. But it's giving people opportunities to continue to buy it at the pre-public rate of $22.22, which, folks, is going to be an absolute steal. I mean, I was talking with Robert about a week ago. It's like almost every other day or so, he's getting calls from museums around the world saying they're wanting in. It is such a win-win situation to bring the art in. And they're just saying that the asset value is going to just go. It's going to take off. And so I've shared this at the workshops, and when I interviewed, Robert all the way back in October, people would say, well, what do they anticipate, the market value being in 2 years? And he won't touch market value. He says, I don't know. I'm not going to comment on market value. And then they said, well, what about asset value? He says, we already have enough art waiting to come in. And the way they've designed the smart contracts, they're not going to take it all at once. It's on a gradual progression basis, so it has a continual growth process. But he is estimating within 2 years the Meta One coin asset value will be over $20,000 per coin. So you can buy it for $22 today. In a little over 2 years, they're already projecting over $20,000 per coin. So everything is set up and ready to go, and all this. He's already, there's been people out there that have been deeply criticizing this, calling this a scam and everything else. And it says, excuse me, folks, you haven't looked at the legal contracts. Number two, you haven't recognized that they already have a $1 billion surety bond backing up all the art. All the art is already under contract and it's insured. So these people that are calling this a scam, they're absolute stupid, crazy, fearful attackers that don't even know what they're talking about. They're just stupid people who don't want to look at the facts of the fact that it's all backed up. It's legal. They've been threatening to send us to the SEC, and they've been saying that now for 2 months. Folks, there's nothing illegal in it. There's over 1,700 crypto coins out there. This is another one, but it's designed on legal contracts, backed up by, assets, and also there's a $1 billion bond that is already out there, and it's all public information. But you guys are just so stupid you don't know where to look. Those are for the attackers. All right, I have my comment on that stuff. So, but so much for that.
Did you get it off your chest?
I got it off my chest. Oh, they've been vicious. I mean, absolutely vicious. And they got theirs coming. Let's just say that we're already setting up some potential legal action against them, and they'll find out.
Wow.
It's their issue. They wanted to step in and create attack and create libel and all kinds of stuff and attack a legitimate company. And so, there's only so much. And after a while, you say, we've had enough. We've just had enough from these liars and cheaters who are just flat out lying and creating havoc and some real viciously attacking the team. I mean, I won't say any more. They'll just find out when it comes time what the results was. But there's legal action in the process. So, yeah. So
Right. Well, that's too bad.
I
Well,
know.
fortunately, Dave, in the workshops and on your show, you've given people the opportunity to call in, ask questions. I'm sure
Yep.
in your workshops, people got to ask questions. They got to meet the board members and given the chance for people to make up their own minds.
Yeah.
In my opinion, it's a wonderful opportunity just to be part of a sovereign bank. I
Yeah.
mean, how many generations have not had the opportunity to deal with a sovereign bank outside of the Federal Reserve System? Just even that's a historical thing.
Well,
So there's a lot of really interesting things wrapped in with this wonderful opportunity.
well, let's just go in and while we're here, we're on this theme and talk about what's going on in the currency updates. Uh, these people also that are attacking, they're calling us total scammers in the currencies and stuff like that, and they say hey there's nothing out there. Says you haven't been to Hong Kong 4 times and met personally with the dragon families. You haven't seen the assets they have. You haven't seen the gold that they have, and I'm not the only one. I've got literally scores of other people that have either been there, they know who they are, and they've always been quiet and behind the scenes. And the thing that we've always been waiting for is to be able to have it where we have a banking system that is safe to move this money. And I can share a little bit of this. I was talking with a gentleman today. We're personal friends, and he has an acquaintance that is an inspector at the Bank of International Settlements. And they basically have already checked us out and everything else, and they know what's going on. So you've got this, the Bank of International Settlements is basically the central bank of the central banks. That's the ones that the Federal Reserve reports to. So they know what's going on, and they could have come in and shut us down. They could have called us. They could have filed lawsuits against us for everything we were doing with these coins. And they said no. They know what's going on. They know what's real, and they know what isn't real. And I'm not going to go into those deep comments on that because I've already commented on in the past what I believe is going to get paid and what is not going to get paid. And I've been very clear about that, and the conversations that I've had with them, it appears that that's kind of all lining up as well. I'll know more about that, in the next week because I'm going to have some more conversations with them. But it's at the end of the day, for the currencies to be paid, everything is in place. We're waiting for the banking structure to be safe so that we can move the money safely and we can basically have that in our accounts. And it hasn't been that way because we have to remember that the central banking system is a cabal-based run operation, okay? And they've been wanting to set up a new banking system where they can safely move the money outside of that central banking cabal-based structure. Because right now, to move that kind of money, you have to move it through their banks. And they don't want that happening. They don't want that going on. So that's what's been taking such a long time to get this done, is to move the money safely. Because if they tried to, in the past, and now, possibly up to now, tried to pay us, we wouldn't even get our money. Because the central banking systems would just lock it up and keep it and not even report it to the public. And all of a sudden it's in their banks and we don't have access to our accounts and they wouldn't let us have anything. There was way, way too much risk of that happening, and that's why they've been working on setting up a new computerized banking system where the structure is safe. In essence, they need something where they can move money interbank outside of the existing SWIFT system that's controlled by the central bank. So that's how it's been explained to me. So, okay.
Well, makes sense. Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of what's going to be very interesting once the Meta One Coin Bank goes up,
Yeah.
because that's not going to be part of the system.
Right.
The
See,
cabal
Meta,
system.
well, it still operates within that existing banking structure, but it has the ability to be a sovereign independent because it has this 1806 charter that was a charter that could be passed on. So it acquired this charter, and by acquiring the charter that's at 1806 based, it was in existence before the Federal Reserve came into an existence. So it's not under their structure. It doesn't have to abide by the strict rules and regulations of the Federal Reserve. It can operate as a full functional bank for us, but it doesn't have to totally tie into the Federal Reserve central banking system. And so that's the positive thing of us having, Meadow Bank to work with. So, yeah.
Right, right.
And they're waiting for
Well,
the
it's
final legal
definitely
contracts to
interesting
get that
time.
set up. What's that?
I was just saying it's definitely interesting times, and I think and I know you're going to be talking about this later, but as we experience this evolution in consciousness as a species, we're going to have to learn to decipher truth from fiction, reality from virtual reality, and some of these voices that are destructive voices may not be the ones we want to listen to, or let's say believe. And so it's an interesting time because there's so many cross currents of information that one has to really have stability of their own mind and a certain presence in their own inner awareness to start steering the course to where they can take advantage of all the great things that are coming because of this evolution in consciousness. But anyway, so this whole topic of the currency exchange and the banking system and then the cryptos, it's all part of that for us to discern our way out to financial freedom.
Yep. So, okay. A couple other announcements I wanted to make. A week ago, when we were here in Sedona, and Michael Lee Hill was with us, the people just loved, him that was there. And I want to talk about something that he has developed. Of everything that goes on in our lives, as far as our physical health, probably the most important thing that we can do is understanding the importance of the water that we drink. We don't exist without water. We have to have water. And what most people in a lot of a lot of systems have not understood, but when water goes through a municipal system, it goes through the pipes and it comes through the faucets and where you turn it on, it loses its energy, is what it does, and it basically becomes dead water. Now, you can go to Michael's website and you can read all about this, and you can even see the pictures that have been done, because he has some of the best biological scientists with NASA that have taken his disc and they've tested water with it. Now, what does it mean by dead water? It's lost its energy, is what it is. And also, it clumps up. The molecules, they clump up together, so when we drink it, it's not giving us the energy that is originally in the water if it's fresh water right out of the stream or out of the ground, where it still has its energy in it. And because see, water holds memory, and that we understand through Dr. The Japanese Dr. Emoto, or whatever his name was, that did these experiments about how water holds memory and how it's shown by how it's structured, as they would photograph it under the microscopes. So water loses its energy when it goes through a municipal water system, because it goes through the pipes, and what it does is it does something to it, and then the molecules all clump up together. When you drink water that's coming out of the municipal taps, our taps in our fountains in our houses or wherever, you turn on the tap, it's come through the municipal system and all the pipes and everything. It loses its energy. It's considered dead water, and the molecules are clumped up together, and so what happens, our bodies don't process it. That water doesn't get deeply into the fully within our cells. So what happens is the water needs to be structured. And structuring water is basically what it does. When you structure the water, it separates the molecules, and it has the ability to bring the life back to it. Now, you've seen me drinking water out of this water bottle. This is a special violet glass bottle, and you put water in here and it structures the water, is what it does. Well, there's something else that we discovered. This disc. You can get these. It's a coaster, and you can get these from Michael Lee Hill's website. His website is michaelleehill.net, and you can go there and you can order these if you want to. The NASA scientist took this image, and they says, we don't understand this completely, but all we know that this is an image that comes out of sound This is basically what Michael did. He took his guitar, tuned it to 432 hertz, strummed the note A, recorded that, took that to a facility that then takes that sound and allows that sound to be vibrating in water, and then takes pictures of the water, and this is what it produced. Well, the scientists at NASA have now taken this image, and they says, we don't know what it is, but all we know is that image has an energy into it. And they took regular tap water, they took a picture of it, and it was a little tiny dot. And then all they did was put some water in a glass and set it on this coaster for about 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, they took pictures of the same water, and it's like it exploded in energy. The energy returned to it. It structured the water, and they said there is energy in this water that we just don't understand how that works. But all we know is that we can take the water and we can measure it, and there's an energy that is in it. When I drink the water out of this bottle, and when I also place it on one of Michael's discs, I can take tap water, and then within 15 to 20 minutes, the water is entirely different. It tastes different, and it's much smoother as it goes through your body, because the water has now become restructured, and it's brought life back to it. So these discs, and here's what Michael has said that what he's finding out from these scientists is there was a Native American tribe that they were always, for their whole lifetimes, they always drank water directly out of the stream. It was very fresh. So they were always drinking fresh water. And they said that they always lived to be 100 to 120 years old, all of them. What they have discovered is that when you drink unstructured water and the molecules clump up, you're not getting the vitality of the energy in your cells. And that allows a lot of the diseases, the sicknesses, the blood problems, if people who have heart and blood problems, it's because they've been drinking dead water almost their whole lives. And they're showing the fact that when people start drinking structured water, it totally revitalizes the blood in your body. They had an individual, they took some blood out and they put the blood under a microscope, and all the cells were clumped up together. They gave him some structured water that was just nothing more than off this disc, sitting on this disc in a glass. 20 minutes later, they took a blood sample again, and this time all the blood cells had separated, and it was operating in a very healthy manner. So when your blood cells are not clumped up together and they're operating and they're healthy and structured, that's what keeps us healthy. And Michael can talk about that much, much better than I can. He is talking about it somewhat on his website. But folks, there is nothing probably more important in our health than the water that we drink. And it's interesting as they're now starting to come forward and understanding the importance of drinking structured water and what it does to our health and our vitality. And the scientists are saying we're just starting to discover this. But Michael discovered something. They said that we had never seen this before. But we get it now. We understand what it is. And Michael is already being invited to go to some major universities here in the United States and be talking with the scientists and telling them what he has done. And so it's really interesting. This is part of what I call the Forrest Gump, Michael's going through. It's like he's this everyday dude, but he's doing things that have the opportunity to really totally change our health. So that's why I want to express that to you. Remember, his website is Michael Lee, L-E-E, Hill, Hill.net, michaelleehill.net. And you can go there and you'll even see the pictures of the dead water versus the energy in the water after the water had been structured and it was just sitting on a disc like this. So, okay. And you can get it in a coaster form like that, or you can get it in a crystal disc like this. Now, there are friends of mine that are absolutely wonderful. Also, somebody just brought up Michael's website on the Facebook page, so it'll be there if you're on the Facebook page. You can see it on my website. There are some friends of mine that are absolutely wonderful, gifted Reiki workers, and they have now seen that the energy that is in this disc, and they says when they do their Reiki work with people, they will always take this disc and they will set it on different parts of their bodies. And even the people that says they can feel the energy coming through the disc and how it's coming into their body. There's something about this, and it's the energy of sound at 432 hertz that is producing a powerful energy stream that has the ability to affect us physically in a very, very positive way. So, all right. So that's what I wanted to share on that. With that, Blanca, is there anything else you'd like to share with us before we get into the program?
Well, that sounds very exciting. Now, so it sounds like that your bottle, the one that you got
Yes.
from Marianne, I also got one, and that water tastes great. And then you set that on the coaster, and you notice a difference again?
Yes,
still?
I do. I do.
Wow.
I do. It's like the coaster takes it to the next step beyond what the bottle did. The bottle was great. The bottle was great, but when you set it on the coaster, it takes it. I mean, I'm just like, it's almost like you're not drinking water. It's so smooth and has a great, very refreshing taste to it. And yet, this was tap water, you know? And you take it, and I'm drinking it as tap water, and then I put it into this bottle and place it on that coaster. It's different, totally different. Totally changes it. And it's very pleasant to drink. You know, it's like you feel it almost refreshing yourself. And it's not just I'm drinking water because I need water. You know, we drink water because, we're, to keep from getting hydrated. But when you had dead water, there's just no comparison between this water and the dead water that comes out of taps. So
You're probably detecting that extra energy in it.
Yeah. And the scientists have discovered, yes, there's energy in that water.
Right.
You go to his website, you look at the drop that was, under the microscope of the dead water, and then you look at the drop that, that became structured. It explodes at almost 150 times bigger than what it was, in when it was just a little tiny drop of dead water. That's the difference it makes. Total difference in when you look at the cell structure of the water under a microscope.
Very
Okay.
exciting stuff.
Yep. Anything else?
No, I think we've covered a lot before you even started the program.
I know. So yes, we did. So, well, okay. Well, tonight, what I want to do is I want to talk about the importance of understanding the power of our thoughts. New science is beginning to show us how our thoughts actually produce these little tiny electromagnetic particles that are called memes. And what these memes do, they basically have the energy of everything that we talk about that is physical matter is made up of electrons. That's the smallest particle underneath the atom. And our thoughts, human consciousness, has the ability to tell the electrons where to go and what to create. What we're starting to understand is the fact that we, as humans, and our consciousness is creating everything around us that we're experiencing. Now, we don't go out and do this, with our conscious thoughts, but it's predominantly what comes from our subconscious and our unconscious thoughts. Those are the thoughts at that level that they're processing massive amounts of information, and they're impacting everything around us is what they're doing. Now, what I want to do tonight, I'm going to show a couple videos that kind of get into, and it shows you some of the research behind this about how it's basically the impact of a consciousness on our thoughts. So let's go to this. I'm going to bring up this scene.
Wonder,
there we go. Okay.
Are people affecting the world of reality that they see? You betcha they are. Every single one of us affects the reality that we see, even if we try to hide from that and play victim. We all are doing it.
Just tell me where you are. Good. But hurry with it, please, because these models are giving me a headache.
10 minutes. became terribly interested in the molecular structure of water and what affects it. Now, water is the most receptive of the four elements. Mr. Emoto thought perhaps it would respond to non-physical events. So he set up a series of studies, applied mental stimuli, and photographed it with a dark field microscope. This first picture is a picture of water from the Fujiwara Dam. And this picture is the same water after receiving a blessing from a Zen Buddhist monk. Now, in this next series of pictures, Mr. Emoto printed out words, taped them to bottles of distilled water, and left them out overnight. This first photograph is a picture of the pure distilled water, just the essence of itself. These subsequent photographs, as you can see, are each different. This is the chi of love. And we move along here to thank you. And you can see where he taped that to this bottle here. But if you read Japanese, you already knew that. Now, Mr. Emoto speaks of the thought or intent being the driving force in all of this. The science of how that actually affects the molecules is unknown, except to the water molecules, of course. And it's really fascinating when you keep in mind that 90% of our bodies are water.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If thoughts can do that to water, imagine what our thoughts can do to us.
Absolutely, thought alone can completely change the body.
Most people don't affect reality in a consistent, substantial way because they don't believe they can. They write an intention and then they erase it because they think that's silly. I mean, I can't do that. And then they write it again and then they erase it. So time average, it's a very small effect. And it really comes down to the fact that they believe they can't do it.
That is an absolutely wonderful video. It's a section that comes out of the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? And it displays to us what the power of our thoughts can do. Now, thoughts, it's basically around energy and the vibration of energy. When you are having very powerful, loving, compassionate, caring, non-judgmental thoughts, your thoughts are vibrating at a much, much higher vibration and frequency. When you are carrying thoughts and comments about negativity, attack, anger, hatred, judgment that are at a much, much lower vibrational frequency, and if you saw in the movie, you saw the differences between I love you and thank you, what they did to the water, versus that one says that I hate you and I'm going to kill you. Totally, totally different impact upon it. If it's having that impact upon water, then imagine what those types of thoughts, the impact it's having on us. There's new research that is coming out that the bottom line, almost all sicknesses, diseases, and deep, what you call affecting bodily injuries, are the result of low vibrating, low energy producing thoughts, because you're producing that type of an energy within your body, and it's creating the opportunity for lower vibrational, i.e. diseases and sicknesses, to come in and be a part of you. Now, as I've said, we don't consciously say, I'm going to have a horrible, vibrating, low energy thought and I'm going to make myself sick. We don't consciously do that. Let me come back to you and explain about A.R. Borden, this absolutely brilliant scientist, how he discovered the structure of the mind. He says we have three levels of the mind. You have the conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and then the unconscious mind. So the conscious mind can only process about 16 to 20 data bits of information per second. But the subconscious mind is processing 60 to 80 million data bits of information per second. So your conscious mind is only an extension of what you're allowing to bring up from the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is in touch. It's processing everything that's going on around it all the time. And so if you're looking at a situation, if you're judgmental, you're negative, you're critical, you're attacking, you got anger, that is all the energy that's running through you, the thoughts that you're feeling into at those 60 to 80,000 data bits of information per second. That's where it's coming from. It's not coming from the conscious thought. Because the conscious thought, you can shift that and you can say something that says, well, I'm going to be great and I'm going to be loving and I'm going to be caring, but down underneath it, you're mad, pissed off, and angry, and you would like to kill that person. That's what you're really producing. You're producing in your life, the energy that you're producing is what is coming out of the subconscious and the unconscious minds. And the research is coming out of that is just absolutely phenomenal. So we're seeing how the impact also that this has upon our lives. Now, we're going to watch a second video here, and this one is called the infamous double slit experiment. And it's an experiment that has been around for decades. It's been done hundreds of times all around the world. And it exemplifies the power of our thoughts as we being the observer is what it is. Let's watch this.
As mentioned earlier, everything is made up of infinite potentiality, and the moment consciousness decides to create from that, creation takes place. The findings of physicist Thomas Young in his famous double slit experiment helps to show this, and while doing so sheds light on the quantum field and how our entire reality operates.
And here we are, the granddaddy of all quantum weirdness, the infamous double slit experiment. To understand this experiment, we first need to see how particles, or little balls of matter, act. If we randomly shoot a small object, say a marble, at the screen, we see a pattern on the back wall where they went through the slit and hit. Now, if we add a second slit, we would expect to see a second band duplicated to the right. Now, let's look at waves. The waves hit the slit and radiate out, striking the back wall with the most intensity directly in line with the slit. The line of brightness on the back screen shows that intensity. This is similar to the line the marbles make. But when we add the second slit, something different happens. If the top of one wave meets the bottom of another wave, they cancel each other out. So now there is an interference pattern on the back wall. Places where the two tops meet are the highest intensity, the bright lines, and where they cancel, there is nothing. So, when we throw things, that is, matter, through two slits, we get this, two bands of hits. And with waves, we get an interference pattern of many bands. Good so far. Now, let's go quantum. An electron is a tiny, tiny bit of matter, like a tiny marble. Let's fire a stream through one slit. It behaves just like the marble, a single band. So, if we shoot these tiny bits through two slits, we should get, like the marbles, two bands. What? An interference pattern! We fired electrons, tiny bits of matter, through. We get a pattern like waves, not like little marbles. How? How could pieces of matter create an interference pattern like a wave? It doesn't make sense. But physicists are clever. They thought, maybe those little balls are bouncing off each other and creating that pattern. So, they decide to shoot electrons through one at a time. There is no way they could interfere with each other. But after an hour of this, the same interference pattern is seen to emerge. The conclusion is inescapable. The single electron leaves as a particle, becomes a wave of potentials, goes through both slits, and interferes with itself to hit the wall like a particle. But mathematically, it's even stranger. It goes through both slits, and it goes through neither. And it goes through just one, and it goes through just the other. All of these possibilities are in superposition with each other. But physicists were completely baffled by this. So they decided to peek and see which slit it actually goes through. They put a measuring device by one slit to see which one it went through and let it fly. But the quantum world is far more mysterious than they could have imagined. When they observed, the electron went back to behaving like a little marble. It produced a pattern of two bands, not an interference pattern of many. The very act of measuring or observing which slit it went through meant it only went through one, not both. The electron decided to act differently, as though it was aware it was being watched.
So what does this tell us about our reality? It tells us that the moment there is consciousness viewing and defining how things should act, the infinite potentials act in that manner. The electron acted in the way consciousness defined it should act. We see two slits, we have particles. We define that they must pass through the two slits and create two lines on the other side. However, before it is defined, the particle carries out every possibility. It is limitless. Consciousness, the observer, who we truly are, is in control of our entire reality. How we define our world and what plays out is entirely up to us on a collective scale. The world is infinite potential and infinite possibility. Our consciousness can shape it in any way we choose.
When you watch that video, again, that comes from What the Bleep Do We Know? That's what the Dr. Quantum part, and then the others is, so what some people have done when they've edited that. And you can find that video on YouTube yourself by going in there, just putting, the double slit experiment in the search window in YouTube, and it will bring up various versions of that. What do those two videos say? They basically say that we are creating the world that we experience. Now, there's some revolt to that sometimes, because they says, wait a minute, are you telling me all the problems I'm going through, all the bad examples or bad issues I'm experiencing, the lack that I'm experiencing in my life, that I am the one that is creating that? And I'm saying absolutely yes. We don't do it consciously, but it comes from old programming at the unconscious level. Because consciously we say, I don't want to be there. But what we've got at the unconscious level, we've got old memories programming that is in there, and that is what is coming out of it. We are the observers that is creating the world that we experience it. We experience it for ourselves individually, and then we also create it collectively. Now, I want to make a statement on that really becomes very profound when we stop to think about it. When we're having problems in our lives with other people, we have a tendency to think that somebody else is creating the problems that I'm experiencing, and I am becoming a victim of what they are doing, or we are collectively are a victim of these evil people that are out there in the world around us. If we are willing to accept the fact that we are the ones that are creating our experiences, there is no such thing as victimhood. Victimhood cannot exist in a world where I am the one that is creating everything. If I am a victim, I'm creating my own victimhood. To say that someone else is creating the problem and I am the victim of that, what's really going on is that there's some deep fear down inside in our unconscious level, and we're projecting that out onto somebody else because I don't like what's happening on the inside. I look at myself deep down on the inside, I don't like that, so my ego consciousness wants to project it out onto someone else and say they are creating the problem. There's real profound thinking behind that, and I don't have time to go into this tonight. I get into much more detail about that when I do it in the workshops. But the great sources to understand that I've shared with you, again, are the ones that I refer to often. The 5th interview by Dr. Jameson Neruda, the books by Gary Renard, and the teachings of A Course in Miracles. They all teach this. We are the ones who are creating our own world, and they back it up. And I now want to take you to the next source that is probably the best source that I can say that describes this, and it's basically the writings of A.R. Borden. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm bringing up the Facebook page. Now, this is a Facebook page that you can go to, and you can see it there at the top, right there. It's called The Writings of A.R. Borden. And Borden was a master. Borden was considered to be the brightest and smartest man in the world. Now, Michael Lee Hill is my friend. He was being tutored by Borden for the last 5 years of his life. And Borden had shared a lot of the writings and the materials that he had given to Michael. These writings and materials, for a while, for about 5 or 6 years, they were not released to the public. Well, about 4 years ago, they created this website, and they're now making Borden's materials available. But to get to them, here's what you have to do. You have to ask to be a member of this website, because if you notice up here, it's a closed group. It's a closed group, but anyone can find the group and see who runs it. Only members can see who is in it and what they post. So you see, it's a closed group, and there's limited access to some of the information that's here. You come over here, you just enter your name and your email address, and you submit that, and they always accept everybody, but they want to use this as a closed group so it doesn't get overexposed or over-dramatized. And if somebody misuses this site, then they have the right to be able to basically, remove them. Well, when you do that, over here is called the files. And you click on the files, and here you are going to see the 43 books, white papers, and essays that Borden had written that they have posted here. There's one here I'm really going to want you to take a look at, because this is the one you're probably going to want to read first. And it's called this one right here, MPO Lerm. It's a PDF. It's about 40 pages in length. Now, let me go in and describe what this is. Borden and his group of scientists had done the research around understanding the power of thought. They clearly understood this from a scientific perspective, in that we are in the process, when we're in the process of creating our world around us, they call it manifest production observership, MPO. As observers, we are manifesting what we are producing, in so many words. We're producing and manifesting the world around us as observers. And he says, we're always doing this all of the time. Well, Borden and his scientists and his colleagues had learned how to take that process and to quicken it and be able to manifest anything that they wanted instantly. What does that mean? They understood that in a world that is basically universe, and it's comprised of what we would call electrons, particles of matter, and we are the ones that are creating it, is that we have the ability to create what it is that whatever we want when we focus our thoughts correctly. And with that, they understood, and they brought forward this quickened process, and they call it LERM, L-E-R-M. It's an acronym, and it stands for Light Encoded Reality Matrix. They had discovered how to make anything appear instantly, anything they wanted. And there's a process that it goes through, and it's not that simple. But what it means is, because things are, we live in a world that's comprised of light packets of energy, we have the ability to encode that light and produce our reality on a quick basis. And there's there's one essay paper and there's another book where Borden really goes into depth about that. Now, this is the one that I'm currently reading, and it's called Ultimate Thought. It's about a 180-page PDF book, and he describes the whole process, the scientific process of how we create things and what it goes through. He says that he and his colleagues, they've discovered there are 7 steps that it goes through from when it starts as a thought till it becomes what is called physical matter in our, he calls it the 4-dimensional world. He adds the dimension of time to our 3 dimensions. So it starts as thought and it appears in the physical world, and there's 7 steps that it goes through, and he describes that. Now, this one is very scientific, and it's not a simple read. I remember talking with Michael Lee, and he said that Borden says, anytime you're going to read my materials, you're probably going to need a dictionary and a thesaurus sitting beside you, because the guy was a genius. He was an absolute genius. But when you go into the 48-page essay on LERM, it's much more simplified. It's much more in a very everyday read for us. And they describe the process of how they could do this, how they could make anything appear. When you go to now, Neruda was an associate of Borden. He was an assistant and an associate to Borden. And when you go to his 5th interview, he's having the discussion with Sarah, the lady that was the journalist that was writing up his interviews. And he starts talking about how they as scientists had discovered this LERM process and they could make anything appear. And Sarah basically says to him, he says, I've had trouble believing you through this process, but now you're trying to tell me something that just seems absolutely fanatical and unbelievable. You're telling me you can make absolutely anything appear. He says, sure, yeah, watch this. Boom. A ball of yarn shows up right in front of her, out of nothing. And she says, you got to be kidding me. I know this isn't magic. You're sitting over there, and you didn't just pull this out of your sleeve somewhere, just make it appear. It showed up right in front of me, out of nowhere. She picks it up, and she says, this is real. It's got a warm feel to it. It has some warmth to it, but it's real yarn. Just a ball of yarn is what it is. And she said, well, that's yarn. That's something pretty simple. She says, can you do $1 million? And he comes back and says, yeah, I can. I can do $1 million. And she says, well, let's see it. And she says, and then Borden says, Neruda says, you don't understand. If I make $1 million show up, how are you going to explain to the bank where you got the money? You're the one that they're going to look at as crazy, and they're going to set an investigation upon you because they're going to say, where did you get this money? How did you all of a sudden come into $1 million out of nowhere? You've got a problem with that. And she said, yeah, you're right. I do have a problem with that. And then he comes back and he says, I can make it appear, but how would you handle knowing that I can also make it disappear? And just like that, the ball of yarn sitting in front of her just vanishes. Because they understood the power of the thought, human consciousness, and how it encodes light. And they had developed this capability within themselves to do that. And she says, I'd probably have more problems with what I had seen it in front of me than watching it disappear. That would be horrible. And then Sarah comes back and she says, what about this? She says, I'm having to take almost 2 months off of work without pay and having to live in a hotel to keep this quiet and not be in my home to do all this work for you. Can you produce $10,000 for me for all my expenses and my lost wages? And he says, yeah, I can do that. Boom. $10,000 in $100 bills showed up right in front of her. And she says, I've been having trouble believing you, but now I understand. you guys are so bright and so far advanced. You understand the structure of this universe. You understand what reality is. You understand what creates our physical world. And we as humans are the ones who are always creating everything around us. And he said, yep, that's true. Borden describes the learn process in that 48-page PDF spot. This is the first time I've ever brought this out into the public because they're now starting to release this. I had a discussion with a friend of mine recently, and we kind of agreed on this. It says, Borden and his colleagues, their research as scientists was so far advanced that even the educational institutions couldn't even keep up with them. They were 50 to 100 years ahead of everything. Borden had made a comment to Michael Lee, and he said, everything that you saw on Star Trek 30 years ago, we do it all for real. Yes, we can do the real beam me up, Scotty. We know how to teleport our bodies because our bodies are just nothing but electrons of energy. We're energy beings, and we know how to make that energy move. So we can do the real beam me up, Scotty. And yes, we can teleport our bodies. We can basically make things appear out of nothing. We can do the learn process. And yes, we can time travel. We understand how to time travel because we understand and know the structure of time. Even Einstein taught us 100 years ago there is no such thing as time. All past, present, and future is happening simultaneously. We understood the physics of it. And in so many words, what Borden is saying, we are the scientists that understand the physics behind the metaphysical world. We understand how it all works. And he was quiet on that for a couple of decades. Well, and it's just in the last 4 years after he passed away, they're allowing his writings to now come out. And a couple of colleagues of mine, we said, you know what's going to happen once Borden's materials become discovered and get out into the academic world? He will go down in history as the next Nikola Tesla. He was that far advanced in everything he was producing. And here we are getting the opportunity to understand where he is now. He's also written another good book called Be Like God. He basically says we understand how Jesus did all of his miracles. We know why he could walk on water, why he could massively produce, food, loaves and fishes to feed 5,000 people out of just almost nothing. We understood why he could do the miracles that he could do is because he understood the laws of physics, and he understood that it was a product of his thought. Our thoughts are what create our limitations. We limit ourselves because of how we're programmed to believe and think this is not possible. Now, learning the learn process is not simple because to do it, you have to unprogram some of that deep unconscious stuff that says, I can't do this, this isn't possible, I've never seen it before, only the miraculous could do it, and I'm not a miraculous person. You have to unprogram that and then replace it with a new program believing that you can. And he describes that process in the 48-page PDF essay, and then also in this book, Ultimate Thought, and in his other books called Be Like God. If you really want to learn how to do that, you can do it. Listen to Neruda's 5th interview. It's on my website. You can go to my website, thesedonaconnection.com, go to the resources tab, and underneath there are the 5 interviews by Neruda, and it's in the 5th one predominantly. I should say, no, he's describing the learn process in 2 and 3. So you'd have to listen to the interviews 2 and 3 to really catch the learn process that is in there. They basically say anybody can do this. Anybody can do this if they're willing to do the work. It takes work to understand it. It takes work to reprogram yourself. But when you do that, it's possible for anybody to learn how to do this. The only limitation is your unwillingness to believe it and your unwillingness to do the work. Doing the work means studying it to understand how it works, and then to unprogram all the doubts and the questions and the beliefs that you can't do it, and to reprogram the unconscious mind, so it becomes an automatic response coming from you. When you do that. So for some people, this is going to take a couple years. It will take a couple years of diligent work. But imagine what your life could be like if you've developed your life to the point that you can do the learn process. You can make anything appear anywhere. And that's what Borden and his colleagues had done. They didn't need money. They didn't need the material world that we had. They had developed their lives to be that way. Now, here's what's interesting and why understanding the power of your thoughts are so important. When you start reading through and you understand how the learn process works, it's very, 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 very difficult to make learn work if you're a negative, low energy, low vibrating, angry, judgmental person. It won't work for you. A few might be able to manipulate it and make it. Because why? What happens is you have to have your body and your mind, and Borden calls those the bio-mind. The bio-mind has to be operating at a very strong, high vibratory energy state. Because he says what happens in the learn is what we call the aura, that, the energy field that is around us. They call it the Meisnick energy field. You have to activate the Meisnick energy field so that it's vibrating at a very strong, high, powerful vibratory state, which means all your thoughts, your consciousness has to be at a high vibrational energy. If you're negative, if you're doubting, it doesn't work. You have to be totally focused, totally positive, totally believing, and allowing yourself to be at a very high vibratory state. And then that Meisnick energy field, that vibratory energy, comes out of you, and it says it comes really out of your solar plexus chakra area, and it comes out, and about an arm's length out from you, it attaches your energy to the light packets. And you've already created in your thought a template, a picture of what it is you're wanting to. So you've got the energy coming out of the thoughts, the template, the image that you want. You're bringing your body into a very high vibratory state. The energy comes out to you, it attaches to the light packets, and boom, it's like an orgasmic explosion of energy. The item appears. There's a real interesting story that Borden had shared. He says that he and some of his colleagues had gone and they visited some Tibetan monks in Tibet. And they're there with them, and they're in a discussion. It's getting close to lunchtime. And they're all sitting there. There was about 5 of people with Borden on his team, and there was about 7 or 8 of the monks that were over there. And it's getting close to lunchtime, and they're just sitting there, and all of a sudden the monks, they go quiet, and they start smiling, and then boom, 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 boom. All of their lunches are showing up just like that right in front of them. They're manifesting, learning their lunches. All of the 8 or 9 or whatever the monks, they got there, they look at it, and they turn over and they look at Borden's team and they just smile. Borden then realizes, okay, he turns to his colleagues and he says, gentlemen, should we show them? Borden's team goes quiet, and then boom, 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 boom. Their lunches just start showing up right in front of them that they manifest in the learn process. And these monks just go ecstatic. They say, you guys know how to do this. And that generated in them a discussion that was absolutely phenomenal, because you had the two sides to the understanding. You had basically the physicist, the scientist, in conjunction with the really high mystical thought, powerful generating Tibetan monks who knew how to have the power of thought. And they combined that stuff together, and it said that they both had learned some things from each other. This is the world that we're moving into. This is the world that we're going to be able to start manifesting, because people, now that this information is becoming public, and through the power of the internet, there are going to be people that are going to want to do this, and I'm on that list. Now, I understand it's going to take me a while. I don't expect this to happen overnight. But this is what we have the ability to become. Most of you come into this program and you listen to me because it's around the money. I mean, come on, of course, we're there. And there's nothing wrong with that. Money attracts. We want the money for ourselves, and we want the money to be used as instrument and tools to be able to share and help with others at all. But imagine what really takes place if we could learn the learn process. We would realize we don't need any money. We can create whatever money it is we want. Just the thought of this sounds very disillusioning or crazy to unbelieving people, because that's where they choose to be. Excuse me, my phone is ringing. Hold on here just a minute. Okay, I'm going to shut it off. So this all comes down to your willingness to believe and to be powerful, to be believing, to be understanding, and to be positive about this versus being negative, condemning, critical, and hating. If that's what you're going to be, then that's your world. That's the world that you get to choose to live in. That's the world that you will produce for yourself, and that's the world that you will experience. But there are always people that are willing to be pioneers, willing to be the ones that says, I want to help create the new world. And this is the new evolution of the human consciousness that we're moving into, this new age and this new era that's going to be available for us. And folks, yes, the money, see, some people have trouble believing the money. Now that I'm talking about learners, and what is this guy? No, all of this is based on either hard, objective, scientific data and research or tangible sources of money and gold and valuables that are out there that the dragon families have had for thousands of years. We either believe it or we don't. And for those that don't want to believe it and you just want to be negative and critical, well, I'm sorry for you. Life's real miserable for you to live in that type of a life. And go live that life if that's what you want to do. But for those of us that are here, this is where we're going. This is where I'm going. And when the money's done and the funds are done coming through and that has been released and people will make their choices of how they're going to use that money, this is where I'm going. And I know the thousands of people who have attended my workshops where they want to go as well. They want to be a part of that. Here's the key through all of this. It's one thing to understand it. It's another thing to get excited about it. It's another thing to be able to visualize it. It's another thing to stay very positive. But at the end of the day, folks, it takes work. And at the end of the day, that's what separates those from that will accomplish that and will experience this learn process versus those that won't. They aren't willing to do the work. At the end of the day, they get caught up too much in the world around them. They get caught up in being too busy. They get caught up in being distracted. What I've learned through this process for myself is, as I'm communicating with thousands of people, and I've had thousands of people attend my workshops, and it's always very, very positive for them because I always have 25 to 35% of the people who attend the workshops are repeats. They keep coming back because they say they keep learning stuff. It changes their lives and they're absolutely loving it. That's all that is very, very good. But I said at the end of the day, there will only be a percentage of those that are willing to do the work. I have learned how to not allow myself to be distracted by something else. So I stay focused on what I do here. I can't believe you the opportunities that I've had to make money, that people have brought stuff to me through this process. People have asked me to be involved in them, and they're wonderful people, and they're great people, and they're credible in what they're doing. And the old me would say, man, I'd love to jump in and do that because I'd love to make that money. But here's what I've said. I said, thank you, but no thank you. Because if I start doing that, I'm distracting myself from staying focused on what my purpose is. My purpose is to help us come into this process and to be pioneers of bringing in the new era. The first step is the money. And the money and the funds coming through the currency exchanges has one primary purpose. Yes, you'll be able to do with it whatever you want to do. But what it's really for is to set you free from a form of financial slavery that we have all been in for hundreds, if not thousands of years, so that you have the time and the energy to do the real work of taking the next step of moving into our new world. It's what I call the holonomic quantum-based world, where we become holonomic quantum-based people. We learn how to live in unlimited capacity. We learn how to develop an unlimited lifestyle. We learn how to live beyond the physical limitations of this world that we've all been programmed to think that's what it's supposed to be. Borden and the others have shown us, no, it's possible to move beyond that. And they're describing to us how it's working and how it's happening. Borden in his writing says, if you want an example of someone who showed us how to do this and that it was possible, his name was Jesus. He was the one. He says, he was our example. He was our prototype. He was the one that came and showed us this is possible for you to learn how to do this. And he says, and if you want to, you can learn to do the same things that he did. He learned how to live beyond the world of physical limitations, understanding the power of his thoughts is what creates its capability. And he was a man that was always coming from a place of deep, compassionate love for humanity. He didn't judge people because he knows as soon as you get into judgment, you lower your vibration. As soon as you get into saying they can't do that or it's not possible, you lower your vibrations. He always saw the absolute complete possibility and he projected that onto them. Always had this deep, wonderful love for people. Being in that place, keeping himself in a very high vibratory state, he always knew anything was possible. There's a great quote that comes out of the Gospels where Jesus says, anything is possible for those who believe. All things are possible for those that believe. Think about that statement. If it's not happening for us, it's because we've programmed ourselves to say, I can't do this. I am not worthy. I am not good enough. This is not possible. I can't do this. You don't believe that you can. You don't think that you can. That's just old programming that we can undo and to replace it with stuff that's very positive and very powerful. That's the world we get to move into. That's the world that we get to live into. And we get to move into being the learning people to help show others in this world where we're going and what we want to produce in our lives. That's the possibility, the limitless possibility that is available for us. Hold on here just a second. I want to pull out another little book. So it's here in my backpack. And it's a very, very powerful book. And I'd like to share that with you. And it's a really great one. And it's this book, and it's by Ken Wapnick. And it's called The Healing Power of Kindness, Volume 2, Forgiving Our Limitations. In this book, Dr. Wapnick, he talks about how we've created a world of limitations. We've created a world that we limit ourselves of what we can and cannot do. And he says, when you're living in a place of deep kindness and love and compassion for people, you have the ability to live in a limitless world. There are no limits. The limits that you bring are only the limits that you bring upon yourself. And again, it's The Healing Power of Kindness by Dr. Ken Wapnick, PhD, and it's Volume 2, Forgiving Our Limitations. Absolutely wonderful read. Again, this is one of those that you read a couple paragraphs and you have to sit it down just to think it through about what it is that it's being said there to let out a program. This is an excellent, excellent book to learn how to reprogram your thinking. This would be one of those books I'll read 10, 15, 20 times over some years because of how powerful it is, in my life. And I've also shared with you the one book that had that started me on that process was Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard, and I've shared that a number of times. So, well, that's pretty much what I wanted to share with the program tonight. I wanted to share about what it is in our world that we're moving into, the world that we can produce, what it is that's coming our ways, and the choices that we have before us. Learning how to understand the power of our thoughts is what created our experiences. We cannot blame anybody else. There is no such thing as being victims. I am the one that's producing things in my life. But yet, so I don't get into a place of being so negative upon myself, it's important to understand my limited thinking is a part of old programming that we've all been through and gone through, but we can change that. Just as you can change a computer program on your computer, so we can change our programmed files as well. It takes time, it takes work, and it takes desire and focus and a vigilant aspect of going after it. I'm doing that. And the people who come to my workshops can say, Dave, we're seeing the difference in your life. You're living this differently. You're not the same person you was 3 and 4 years ago. And I'm experiencing that I'm not, because I'm learning how to do this work, and I'm doing it, and I'm loving it. Well, that's the program tonight that I wanted to share with you folks. And with that, Blanca, why don't you come on and join us and share some of your thoughts of what I've shared with you tonight on the program.
Well, you've taken us on quite a journey, Dave. And you've done a very good job of showing a very empowered view of our thoughts and our energy and what is possible. And the videos you shared, very intriguing. It's interesting that it was about water, too. And you were talking about Michael E. Hill and the impact of his coasters on the water. It was a nice kind of segue. And then you brought us to, again, and you've spoken of A.R. Borden before, and went a little deeper into the MPO process and LEARN process. And if someone's kind of scratching their head saying, why is Dave talking about this? How is this related to the currency exchange? And is he telling us to do this, or what? If people are kind of trying, and you've shared it with us several times, but if you were to crystallize your point, why are you sharing this information with us?
It's because the money is only the first step of the process of us in our human evolvement and development as a human race. We are moving into a new era and a new world. And to do that, we have to be free from the past paradigms of slavery upon our lives. And there's been two very powerful forms of slavery for us. Number one, creating a negative world, thinking that we are basically limited people who can't produce and create things in our lives. And number two, for thousands of years, the power of money has dominated our world, and we've lived in financial slavery. And so what I've shared tonight in this whole process is we are learning how to be set free and to move into our new world. The money is the first step. It's what creates the financial freedom, so that we then have the time and the ability to resources to do the real work of being unlimited people and learning how to acquire that and make that happen. I can't even begin to imagine what the world is going to be like in 80 to 100 years from now. And if you think that's a long ways, well, folks, we are just starting to scratch the surface. Our physical bodies can live for hundreds of years. 80 years from now, people are going to be living to be 130, 150 to 170 years old. And if we learn how to do that and produce the positive thoughts in our lives and live from that perspective, drink powered energy water, because water is the most important thing that happens in our bodies. You can live without food, but you can't live without water. You know, and we understand that. We know that sooner or later we need water. So these are the things that are giving us the capability. I wouldn't be surprised, you know, barring some accident, that I could live to be 120 years old. And I think it's possible. That means I'm only about halfway through, you know. And so I've got another 50, 60, 70 years to learn all this stuff. And I know I'm going to know it. I'm going to learn it. I know that. I just know 10, 15 years from now, my life is going to be a totally, entirely different life. And that's where we're going. And I want to be one of the pioneers on the forefront to make it happen. So I know that was a little more than a quick abbreviated version, but that's the real reason. Money is secondary. It's important, but it's secondary. And money is the attraction point for where we are in our life right now. Okay? All right, so that's it. Back to you.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad that you're feeling you're going to live to be 120 years old, because that's the aim that Alan and I set. So who knows, y'all?
Wow.
You and I will still be doing the show.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yes, and it does feel like a real possibility with the way things are accelerating and how we're learning to work with our bodies and our minds. And so those possibilities are there. It's the body is designed for that. It's really interesting. It's our own thinking that has actually kind of hampered the body from living longer. So we'll learn about that. The other thing you mentioned, and this is something that people will see for themselves, is A.R. Borden is a genius.
Absolutely.
He really is. And so people may want to warm up before they, go into the ultimate thought material. And I agree with you. Reading the Neruda interviews, especially number 5, is a great way to kind of warm up, get some context before you jump, into A.R. Borden's writings. This way, it's almost going to be, and this is the cool thing, it's almost like when you're going to run a marathon, right? And so people may say, well, gosh, I don't think I could ever do the MPO process or the LEARN process. That just seems too way out. Well, someone might say, I can't run a marathon, but I'm going to try. And so they'll fix their diet up. They might run, half a mile first and then a mile. So as they're preparing to run a marathon, there is already growth physically, mentally, and spiritually when they prepare to run a big marathon. I see this, especially the way you've been talking about it, to attempt to or practice the MPO process or LEARN process. One is going to have to suit up and kind of develop for it.
Yes.
Intellectually, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and so even the journey is going to be a benefit. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. That's a great illustration. Because, you just don't step from one day and the next day you're running a marathon. It takes months of training.
Right.
It takes months of training to get yourself up to the point where you can handle the endurance of running 26 miles. Well, this is the same thing, but it's kind of like a mental marathon versus a physical marathon. And the LEARN process is the end goal of running the marathon. And the money is only a part of the process along the way of the journey of preparing yourself and training yourself and getting yourself in a mental and physical condition to be able to handle this. So, yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be appearing in our lives if it wasn't a possibility for us either. So the fact that we had an A.R. Borden, the fact that the writings are being released, the fact that science is now showing that consciousness is important in manifestation, all these things are coming together to point us in the direction to step off and try it and do it. Mm-hmm. We're already doing it. It's only unconsciously. And what we're going to learn is to do it consciously. That seems to be what you've been saying, too.
There's others who are professional scientists who have done it before us. And they're saying, you can do it too if you're willing to learn how to do the work. And they're explaining to us how to do it. And it's not simple. It takes work, but it can be done. And you see, when you're in the beginning, when you're the early pioneers are the people that always kind of break the ground for the others to follow. And we're getting to be the pioneers in the process. The pioneers are usually the ones that always do the first hardest work for everybody else to follow. And that's just normal when you're breaking forward into a new world. And the more of us that begin to do this, then others will pick up on it. Imagine, in 5 to 10 years, and there's a couple million people that can do the LEARN process. Well, what is that doing for the new children that are coming up and watching that? Watch them pick up on this really fast. Why? Because they don't have the limitations of the old programming that they have to undo. They don't have the unbelief to undo. They can pick this up. And so I'd say in 5 to 10 years, it's going to start really picking up a momentum on being able to do this. And it's going to really start separating, to use the biblical term, the sheep from the goats. It really is. You're going to start separating from people who will learn how to do this versus those that don't want to. And those that don't want to, and when you read the Neruda interviews, those are the people that are going to be moving into what is called controlled by the artificial intelligence world. That's going to be the new default system. an artificial intelligence controlled world that is very seductive, but what you've done, it's robbed you of the qualities of the soul. And those of us who are only going to learn this process are the ones that are going to learn the importance of understanding the power of human consciousness versus just being a part of the programmed world. So. And I want to be a part of the programmed
Yes,
world.
it's almost a step towards freedom too.
It is.
Really, because we are living in such a programmed reality that we're going to have to step away from the program, from the reality, quote unquote, that is fed to us, force fed to us, and start learning about our consciousness and actually using it on a proactive basis to create a real reality instead of a virtual program reality.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an exciting future for us when we look at that, if we're willing to do the work. It's a very exciting future if we're willing to do that. And if not, then we'll just end up continuing to be a part of the programmed world. Because we're part of a program, look at the world around you, how much the world is just a programmed world. And we're learning how to break ourselves free from it and learning how to become what is called self-sovereign freedom beings. So. Okay, well, is there anything else that we want to share before we can go into some callers?
No, I think we might still want to give out the number.
Yes.
Instruct folks how to give us a call and ask any questions or give some comments. You had a lot to share today. I'd be kind of neat to hear what people have to say or what questions they have.
Yeah. Folks, just to let you know, again, the number is, if you want to call in, if you have a question or you want to make some comments, the number is 515-605-9356. And that's on the website. Again, and if you're also on the Blog Talk Radio site, the number's there as well. It's 515-605-9356. And there's only a couple people that are there. But let me do this. Let me go first to a couple email questions. That I have there that some people had that brought up tonight. There was a person that had written in and says, it says, I appreciate if you would touch on this tonight. Waiting for the currency swap is one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Not being able to let myself even get a little excited in each update and email, hearing the most powerful people in the world are against this. Folks, it's important to here was a guy. It says that, I said, knowing the people that need help, I can't offer any, and hearing soon dozens of times. Well, can I be very practical? Quit reading the other blog sites, folks. They're the only ones that are out there saying it's soon, it's going to be next week. Folks, they never can tell you where the money's coming from. Those are all design entrapments or people that don't know what they're talking about. Just don't go there. For the currency to come forward, it's important to understand it's not about us. This is a government-run operation that is designed to totally change the basic economic structure of our world that we live in, and we are getting to be beneficiaries of that decisions and that process, and we're secondary. It's not about us when the money's going to get released. It's about when it's get ready to go on a much, much larger scale. So, and then another question had come forward. It says, a person had said, creating reality with our thoughts. What about the other side? He says, as an example, all these immigrants or leftists that are bringing into our Western world, won't that eventually turn our countries into Islamic states? Well, if the collective consciousness of the people say they want that, then yes, it will. Okay? The real issue is, what are you choosing to do for you? I am the one that's in control of my life, regardless of what is going on out there. Imagine you were an American citizen who was living in this Islamic world. You're still in control of what you're thinking, what you're producing, and what you're experiencing. Now, there may be some physical limitations, yes, but your emotional state, your mental state is totally yours to decide. Nobody else has the power to do that. They only have it if you let them do it, and you are then at the subconscious level choosing to allow others to control you. Get in control of yourself and allow yourself to be the one who is in total control of that. So, those were the two emails that I had come in, and there's always I got room for more, if a couple others if you want to do that. But let's go on over to the first caller, and then Blanca, you can go ahead and start processing the others and kind of scoping them out. So the first one is our normal caller that comes in, and that's Kirk. Kirk, you're here on the air tonight. What can we help you with tonight?
Hey, how are you, Dave?
I'm doing good.
You okay?
Yep, hear you just fine.
Great. Well, I just wanted to make a couple comments, actually, because obviously I listened all the way through, and I would just say that was kind of a quantum leap in your program tonight, starting to bring forward the real A.R. Borden elements of this. You've touched on them before, but to really kind of go full force and saying it's time for people to kind of embrace and realize they can do it themselves is quite a powerful statement, and which I do believe to be true. One question I had is, obviously there are people who are very familiar with this information. Obviously Michael Lee, but a broader community because of the Neruda interviews and the writing. Has anyone stepped up to actually organize groups to kind of coach people in a process to do this?
No, not well. There might be some groups out there. I have thought about doing that myself. That organizing groups in communities and cities around the country. Let me just be practical. You may have in one city have someone who is a very, very good leader, and they step up and they have the vision for this, and they're giving great leadership. And you could go to another community, you could have someone that wants to step up and be the leader, and they're not a good leader. And then they could end up creating serious problems for the whole thing. You could have people that would want to step up and be a leader and to destroy the message that is here, attack me, and lead the group into attacking me. I'm not going to organize that. If somebody wants to do that, that's on their own. Don't expect it to come through the Sedona Connection to organize groups of communities at this time. Now, down the road, possibly yes. But right now, this is an individual responsibility. Because see, at the end of the day, we can learn from each other, and that's all that the group is for. But this type of work is only work that you and I can do for ourselves. Nobody else can do this for me. I can learn from others, but I'm giving you all of the professionals who have already done it to learn where to learn it from doing your own reading or listening to the audios that are out there. So the group coming together and forming a group is basically to have a support base is what it is. But I'm not going to do that, because when you get into stuff that is this controversial, there will be people that will step in. Remember, there are people out there that want to totally shut us down and attack us and not let the money come forward. And if you try to start organizing groups, that's an excellent vehicle for the attackers to come in and basically cause all kinds of disruption in this process. And I'm not going to go there. So that's why.
Well, I agree with that. I think that's a very wise thing. I guess and it's, again, this is kind of a quantum leap discussion we've had tonight on this. And it's early on in the thinking, and 2 to 3 years down the road, it might be easier to see what's path for how you support the process. And I think your observation that it's really more about an individual journey, but maybe where people can tap the support of a community, in possibly a private Facebook group or something else, where we all kind of no single leader, but there are people that can share experiences and potentially thoughts and ways of overcoming at different levels what's going.
Well, let me make a comment now. You said that this was kind of a quantum leap. Yes, it is for the radio program, but this is the third section of my workshop that I've been doing for over 4 years. For the last 3 and 4 years, this is what I'm teaching in the workshops, because I have 3 sections to the whole day. And what I have is I have a full day versus a 2-hour program. So tonight, I basically gave a condensed version of the last section of the workshop that goes on for over 2 hours. But I've been sharing this stuff in the workshops for years. So this is not new.
Well,
It's only new to the radio program.
I'm familiar with this is because of that.
What's that? I'm sorry?
So one of the reasons I'm familiar with what we're talking tonight is because I have been to your workshops and I know that you do present this. I was thinking in terms of what you're speaking out to people, and I think it's great that you're sharing this and bringing it forward. You did mention the number of resources today, such as the Writings of A.R. Borden's Facebook, private Facebook page, as well as the Kindness book and so on. If it's at all possible, it may be in your next newsletter to kind of provide links, maybe, to some of that, some of those things. That would be helpful, I think, for people to follow up, because you already have the Neruda interviews, which is where everybody should start. There's no doubt.
Well, I can put I can put the information on my website, but I mean, if you watched the program tonight, you got all the information you needed. I showed you the Facebook page, The Writings of A.R. Borden. All you got to do is go there yourself, and I showed you the book. If you want it, just go to Amazon and check it out. Otherwise,
well, you're right. I'm on the radio. I'm on the radio.
Right. You see, I mean, it's there on the video, and you can go to my Facebook page, and I'll have it. In the next day or two, I'll have it. Edited up on YouTube because the video is there. So it's all there for if anybody wants it. So yeah. So okay.
So one final question. Obviously, You're going to have Michael Lee Hill at an event. You were going to have him on the radio program last week. Do you anticipate?
No, not last week, because I was on the airplane last week. I was flying to Norway on the plane during program time. So
the week before, when you had technical difficulties.
Yes. Okay. Right.
I was just suggesting, are you going to have him on a program coming up before that event?
I'll have him back soon.
All right. Thanks, Dave.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Okay. All right. Have a good evening. Okay, we're going to the next caller. His name is Max from area code 617. Max, you're on the air. What can I help you with here tonight?
Hi, Dave. I just have a question, actually.
Yeah.
How can what you shared tonight, including A.R. Borden, be used to assist people that have significant debilitating health issues? Because what good is the money if the health is going south?
Well, if you understand what Borden writes, if you understand what Gary Renard writes, if you understand what Neruda refers to, if you understand what's happening in A Course in Miracles, all sicknesses and diseases are a result of the mind, not the physical body. The body, you experience it in the physical body, but what allows it to come forward is the mind. I know that doesn't sound very good, but it's what I said earlier in the program. We don't consciously go out and say, I'm going to be a physical debilitating person. But why does that happen in your life when you're the ones who are creating it? Because it's human consciousness that creates everything we experience. It's usually because there's very, very deep unconscious aspects of guilt, fear, ego consciousness, judgment, and etc. that's been going on in our lives. Excuse me. That it establishes the physical vibrational energy for that stuff to come into us. So if people are in debilitating illnesses, the most important thing that I can say is to learn how to get positive with yourself. If you want to focus on your negativity, if you want to focus on your pain, if that's what you're always thinking about, then that's what you're going to experience. There are people that have physical handicap limitations that are absolutely positive people. They refuse to allow a debilitating handicap to predicate how they experience life. There are lots of people who basically have, handicaps, and they see the handicap as a positive aspect. They take the negative and they turn it into a positive. I don't know what else to say, because people, when we produce our own experiences, when we're creating that and we are creators instead of victims, that's how you can address it. It doesn't sound good at first. I understand that. But at some point in time, you have to get past what is called the self-judgment before you can even begin to make a change in your life. And you have to allow yourself to be willing to believe that it is possible for me to shift and change my life. And it's happened. It's happened before us. But he says, but we've looked at it and put it into what is called the world of miracles. And because it's the world of miracles, then I'm not worthy of a miracle. We don't experience it. And I said, no, it's not about miracles. It's all about thought and consciousness. Thought and consciousness is what produces the miracles. Does that make sense?
It's relevant. It's logical. Even Gary Renard says, though, sometimes it's just part of the script. For instance, our friend Ken Wapnick, he died of cancer, so it's not
right.
It's not completely within the individual's capability to change what is sort of in the cards, if you will.
And that's true. It's basically, yes, Ken Wapnick, was the master at this, and he died of cancer, but he refused to allow the cancer to put a limitation on his life. See, he saw that the cancer was a forgiveness opportunity. It was an opportunity to expand the soul, is what it was. So the negativity, if you look at it that way, that what appears to be negative in the outward world can be a very positive aspect for us if we allow ourselves to come into it with that form of consciousness. And Wapnick was an example of that. So it's not about what the appearance is on the outside, it's about how we're processing it on the inside. That's what's really important.
That's a good response.
Yeah. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Is that it?
Nope.
Great.
That's it.
Thanks for joining us tonight. Well, Blanca, that's all we had. We only had 2 people call in tonight, and I only had 2, basically, let me go back to my inbox and see if there might have been some new emails that have come in. Let me see. Yeah, so that's about it. That's all I had for tonight. Unless I haven't seen anybody else call in. So.
No, I don't see anybody else raising their hand to ask a question. So
Anything
maybe
else?
they've got a lot of food for thought here.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add to that, to our program tonight? If not, I'm kind of ready to kind of close it up for the evening.
Right. Well, it occurs to me, it was a good question about the health issues.
Yeah.
It occurs to me sometimes, I mean, you and I have been talking about this. Many of your listeners are familiar with this type of thinking and this type of process, but sometimes others may think that it's a bit hard or a bit unfeeling, right? But I think the shift is here of one of taking responsibility for one's experience in life and for what creates and what one does with what one is given and experiencing in life. So that shift from a victim consciousness to a self-responsibility or creator consciousness. And so if people are still locked in a victim mentality, it can sound kind of, a bit harsh to say, wait a minute, we're responsible for the reality we're creating here. So I just, and I know you've mentioned that before, but to some folks, as they're perhaps changing their way of thinking, realizing that there is an escape to the program reality, they may kind of deal with that. It sounds a bit hard.
There's I think a great way to describe that is understanding the difference between compassion and sympathy. Compassion says there's an understanding. I understand where you are, and I can empathize with where you are, but I'm not going to allow myself to basically come into your level and be a product of what got you there. Sympathy is something that can be very demoralizing. It says, I feel sorry for you, I'm so sorry, but all you're doing is reinforcing the pain and the negativity that is already there. It's one thing to have compassion, and yet it's another thing to say there's an answer out of your problem. If you're comfortable with where you are, then that's totally different. But if you're in a painful place where you're griping and complaining and you're in a place of misery, well, what are you going to do to change that? Because if you don't, it's just going to continue. And compassion says, here's a way to understand it. I understand that this doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it can for a few, but for most people, it requires a change in consciousness to basically change the perception that we have of what's going on, because it was our consciousness that created it in the first place. And we have to be willing to accept that.
Too.
Yeah.
Right, where if indeed one is shifting from the victim consciousness to an empowered, self-responsible creator consciousness, one sees the challenges in life as actually the call to exercise release of the victimhood mentality and assumption of a more empowered form of consciousness.
Yeah.
So how can we transform this particular challenge? Where is the higher vibration within this seemingly lower vibration manifestation? Then it becomes very intriguing when you look at the challenges, as there's a gift inside there, and the gift is for me to rise above it consciously.
Yes, and that's why I keep referring back to you. If you want a book that will change your life and help you get in the right direction, that best book to start is Disappearance of the Universe by Gary Renard. It totally changed. That was the book when I read it the first time. It was like I would read it would take me 2 to 3 hours just to go through a couple pages. And I'm at the point now and I keep reading it over and over again, and I keep learning more from it every time that I do it, or it reinforces, or it brings back, the memories until this becomes habitual in my own life, thinking that way. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting there now as work, but it's because I've been working on it for 9 years, and I'm experiencing the results and the product of 9 years of work just totally change how I think. And I'm loving my life. My life has totally changed. I don't experience fear anymore. I don't experience anxiety. I don't have worries. I rarely, very rarely ever experience anger at all anymore. For the most of my life, my day is a place of peace. I'm always peaceful, and I feel like I'm always in control of everything that's going on around me. If something comes at me that seems to be maybe it's not a part of my control, I know how to respond to it so that it doesn't bring me down. And I wasn't like that 7-10 years ago, but I am now.
Right.
That's what I'm experiencing. And who wouldn't want to be there feeling like you are totally in control and the master of your life? And you're at at a place of peace. So having that cough on that note, I had picked up a sinus infection over the weekend, and I thought, why is this going on to me? And I was just in a quiet time of meditation, and I just heard Spirit says, this is an opportunity for you to learn how to have some discomfort and how to move beyond it. Because I hadn't had that for a long time. Right. I rarely ever get sick anymore. And it's just, it was just an inconvenience of a sinus congestion and with a cough and stuff like that. But I'm seeing it as a very positive thing, because it's helped me refocus some of my stuff about how I think. And it's been really great. So,
So when we have these challenges, that's the way to look at it. What's the gift? What is it pointing me to?
Yeah.
I think it looks like someone in a 773 number
has
raised their hand. You want to check on him?
We'll do that. We'll go to the person that just came in with area code 773. So I'm going right to you, area code 773. You're here on the air. What can we help you with tonight?
Yeah, Dave, this is Cliff. I was in Sedona last couple of weeks. I was there with my brother. He really got me thinking on a lot of this stuff. What we learned there tonight was somewhat of a rehash. I was brought up as a Christian Scientist, and some of the teachings that they had in the church are very similar to what you mentioned about how life is something that we control with our mind, and that our sicknesses are also controlled by our thinking. And I just wanted ask you if you've ever looked into that religion and
well, I know it was very much a part of the life of Mary Baker Eddy, who founded Christian Science. She was a wonderful lady who understood this and made it become very much a part of her life, and basically the church had developed out of that. And I'm not here to be critical on them, but my experience of being a religion major in college and being around this stuff for 40 years is when it becomes institutionalized, it usually then becomes limited. The institutions have a tendency to try to program it instead of letting it be what I call an essence of the individual. So there's lots of wonderful things in the teachings of Christian Science. I absolutely honor that and recognize that. But also there's been people that have institutionalized it, and then they have a tendency to be critical and condemning to those who don't follow it. And most of your, what I call the institutional parts of churches, they do that. They set themselves up in what is called a place of what I call division or duality or separation. We're right, we're good, and those who don't believe like that, well, they're just somewhat less, And it's easy to fall into that trap when it becomes what I call the institutional part of it versus the individual that keeps themselves in the positive place of honoring and respecting others for where they are. So, does that make sense?
No, that can be said of all religions, I guess.
Yeah, it can.
You interpret it.
The processes that we go through in our church experiences, it's a part of our own development. The question is, are you going to get negative and critical and think you're the one that's right and stay there, or are you going to allow it to be a growth experience and allow it to take where you need to go and trust the direction of the Holy Spirit in your own individual life? Because the Holy Spirit can work beyond what we call, the institutions of religion. And so there's a positive aspect for the people that are there. Absolutely very powerful and positive aspect. And when people come up to me and just say, well, you're not in the same place that you used to be, I says, that's right, that's where I am. But if it's working for you, and if it's positive for you, and if you're growing, if you're learning, then stay there. And allow that to be a part of that. Allow it to be a vehicle that helps you get through that. Just don't get caught into the entrapment of judgment or negativity that a lot of church institutions can get involved in. And that's across the board. They all have their positive aspects and some of the negativity that they can fall into. So what it really comes down to, again, is an individual responsibility. Okay?
I totally agree with you there. It comes down to how you interpret things.
Yeah.
It's most of the people I grew up with were either Jewish or Catholic, and you try not to be critical because that's their belief. And
artificial intelligence empowers us to feed the world without wrecking the planet.
Using Microsoft AI, we can make predictions about when to plant, irrigate, and harvest. We can reduce waste and produce more food.
And I told my wife, I said, when they're 18, they're going to decide what they want.
Yeah.
They're going to be out of school and they're going to decide, hey, this is what I want, this is what I don't want.
It's a part of all of the growth that we go through. So just, allow people that freedom to go through that growth and that process in their life. Because that's what gets them to where they are. The question is, are you staying stuck? Or are you continuing to expand? It's an issue of being stuck or being in a place of expansion. If they're in expansion, then it's great. It's wonderful for them.
Right.
Okay.
Well, like I say, the day that you stop learning is the day that you're dead.
That's right. And I plan on continuing to always be in the world of learning because I love it. I love the learning. So, okay, anything else?
No, that's it. And you have a wonderful night. And we'll
Great.
Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, Blanca, my timer on there says we're down to about 3 minutes before we're going to be cut off the air tonight. So we've had a full 2-hour program tonight. Are we ready to say goodnight to everybody?
I think we're ready. It was nice that Cliff joined us. That was a nice conversation because religion is also important
It is.
for people to kind of get their heads around. But I think we had a full session today.
Yeah, it is. It's very easy to become critical because we feel that they're judgmental. But again, it's only a part of perception. Let people be where they are. Allow them to be in this place of expansion. And if that's where they are in that time of their life and they're expanding, then great. I was in evangelical Christianity for 25 years. And then as I allowed myself to continue to grow and to expand, I realized I allowed myself the freedom to listen to my questions. And then the questions helped expand me to where I feel like I'm doing better than I've ever done before. So, yeah. Okay, I think then we're ready to call it a quit for the night. All right?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, folks, for joining us tonight here on the March 6th program of the Sedona Connection, and hopefully then we'll see you again next week. Okay, bye-bye.